It's time we're going to start a project to make a coral reef inspired ornament statue from Polymer Clay. I'll see you then. Hi guys, welcome. I'm Carly from Carly's Creative Clay. I hope you've had a good, well, week, fortnight. I wasn't here last week. I'm sorry about that, but it's been a heck of a time for me. Really has. The last project that we did was this panda, and I thought, let me move the white clay out of the way.
Streaming Robin says
hi, welcome. We made this last week, so this is it varnished. Varnishing always brings the colour out, I find, with polymer clay. For this I used my Deco Art Duraclear gloss varnish, but
Streaming Robin says so great.
thank you very much. So long as it's a polyurethane varnish, it'll work fine on your polymer clay. So let's get this to one side and we can talk about the project that we're doing over the next few weeks. It's a new big project. Now, I've got started on it, but I'll talk you through what I've got going on here. We are doing a ornament statue based on this photo. I saw it, I really liked it. It's Great Barrier Reef in Australia. Very hard to find a photo from before it all got colour bleached. I will go through about what bleaching is, but very quickly, Great Barrier Reef is the largest coral reef system on the planet. It's in Australia. It's 3,000 individual reefs, 900 islands. Started being formed, they think, around 20 million years ago from the layers of old coral under the new. Holds about 10% of the world's fish there. It likes warm, shallow water, so the corals around, if you can see in the picture, you can see the wave line just above it. You'd think that'll mean that it's all really close to the shore. Actually, it's not. A lot of it, you'll be in a boat for 2 hours, just being taken to the dive sites where all the coral is. Unfortunately, due to pollution and temperature change in the water, coral has done something called bleaching, which means it puts out its algae, expels it, and that algae is what gives all the coral its colour.
Liz says, morning.
Morning, Liz.
Turned out so cute.
Thank you very much. It can come back from this state, but it needs a bit of help, and there is stuff going on to help it. So back to what we're making. This here, what I started out with is some 3mm chip. It's not chipboard, it's MDF. I keep wanting to call it chipboard because I'm a Cockney and that's what we used to call it.
Chipboard is low density fiberboard.
But apparently chipboard is low density fiberboard and I use medium density. But either which way, 3mm of it. So it's almost thick enough you could cut it with a strong pair of scissors. Definitely with a proper knife.
I cut it with one of these if you want
to. Like, I can't remember what they're called. Stanley knives? One of those will cut through it fine. It's up to you what size you make your base. But I eyeballed it basically. Then once you've got your base cut out, you're going to get tin foil and you're going to start to scrunch it into the shapes that you like. You don't want it too loose. This bit, it's a bit too loose. You can feel the give in it, you can see it. You want it probably around this sort of tightness. So you can feel, you can't really scrunch it much more, but you're not beating it up with a hammer to get it so that it's really, really tight. Just enough that it's firm enough to hold its shape. The reason for using a foil centre in the clay is for the clay to go to a hard plastic, like you saw with the panda and the pots, hard plastic. It's got to reach the temperature that is stated on your clay packet. It's different for different brands. If it doesn't reach that temperature, it will stay soft. And like everything in an oven, the temperature is reached from the outside in. So if you've got a very thick piece, it's highly likely the core of it is not going to go hard. And then you've got like a Smarties situation where you've got a crunchy outside but the inside is unstable and moving, and it's easy to break. So we use foil because it's a far more stable thing. Now, once you've got your shapes, I super glued them on. You don't want to use super glue anywhere that you're going to be seeing it because it turns dark brown in the oven. But to glue your tin foil to your chipboard, that's fine. This little archway, as you can see, there's a little archway. What I've done is I poked florist wire into the two sides of foil that has been glued down, and then scrunched foil around it. Once I'm happy with what I'm going to use as my rock face, I covered it in masking tape, and the masking tape, if you look, goes round and to the underside. It's just another thing that will help anchor the foil down. The other reason for masking tape is when you've got your foil in little pointy triangle bits, like you can see here, little sharp triangles, that's what naturally happens when you scrunch up foil. They work almost like a little arrowhead. The triangle is a structurally very stable shape, so when you push your clay onto it, they will just literally pierce straight through your clay and you end up with bits of foil sticking through. Masking tape, however, even if you've got points on it, which I do, you can see it never sticks through the clay. It will always, when you put the clay on, fold flat. So
you want me to adjust both the focus and the exposure at the same time? You're going to have to slow down.
okay, sorry, just being told I need to slow down so that my hubby can sort out the focus. Right, so you can see there are lots of ridges and sticky up bits. They will never go through the clay. So that's the other reason. It's an anchor and it will protect anything poking through your clay. Lastly, the last bit I did was covered it in PVA glue. You don't need to do this if you're going to start covering it in clay as soon as you covered it in your masking tape. If you're going to leave it for anything more than a couple of hours, you'll find your masking tape starts to peel up. The glue on it isn't that great. Covering it in PVA will hold that masking tape onto your piece for as long as you want. No, it's just PVA, not mixed with water. Just coat the whole thing. Bit messy, but it's fine. And it will hold your masking tape forevermore. I did this a week and a bit ago. No peeling. So that's how you end up with your starting point, which is the shapes of the rocks that I'm going to do around the side. So first things first, I want to get a sandy type set up for the base. Now what I've done is, you'll see I do videos of, I've done a video of my swirly clay. There's 3 stages, very chunky, medium and fine. I think it's a couple of videos back, but I use this swirly thing so much that if I did it every single time, everyone would get bored of me doing it. So what I've done is my medium swirly, and then put it through my pasta machine. Now, colour scheme. Have we got something that can show that off a little better?
Yeah, but I turned the exposure down 1 notch.
The exposures, it's a lot brighter than that, but we've had to turn the exposure down to show the pattern. What we've got is ochre and a huge amount of white for the very, very light tanned colour. The yellow is the standard lemon from Fimo, and then the almost saffron colour is an orange and white mix. So sheets of that. Now I want to cover the bottom as well as the base. I'm going to start with the bottom. So don't make clay sheets too thin, you'll find it hard to put them on. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to wrap this up the sides a little. Don't care if it cracks a bit, that's fine, because it's been a week since I made this. My big thing is get the air out, push it down firmly and start to wrap so that these little edges around the corners are covered. I'll come in and trim it all up in a bit, but you can just come in and pinch off what you don't need, like that. Once I've got this first sheet stuck down roughly where I want it, you can make a really large sheet to go over the whole thing, but I find it just doesn't fit in my pasta machine that well. So, and this is just fine. Let's take off this extra, and I like tearing it because it gives a more rough edge and I'm not spending too much time fiddling around and worrying about it. So that's our first bit of clay on. Now we've got the rest to patch in. I'm going to save these little bits, don't scrunch them up, we may be needing them later as a patch job. Swig a drink. Next sheet of yellow. I've done several of these, and what I'm going to do is just match up the line as much as you can. If you put your thumb along that edge, you can literally push the next sheet up next to it. Let's get that line. You can also overlap. That will help the bond. So I try to overlap very slightly, like so. We're going to push that down, make sure we're not trapping any air. And then we're coming up the sides again. Whoop. Now, I've got a little gap there. I could either get the little bit of scrap and push it into that, or you can just move the clay that you've got down and over to fill that gap. See? Sorry, we're going to have to do this on a dimmer exposure. But I just literally pushed the clay over to fill that gap. So my motto of why bother measuring stands. I'm probably going to go through my entire clay world measuring next to nothing that I make. So tearing a bit off here because we don't need a lot to come around that rock. So let's tear it off here, and I can start to bring it round into that gap. See? Like so. Move this sheet out the way. Always put it on a bit of grease-proof paper once you've covered anything on the bottom. You need to do this because if you stick it to your countertop, you're going to then have to try and get a blade under the whole thing, and it's easy just to mess up your design that way. But I'm just pushing it in and making it fit the shape I want. Because it's a smudgy material, you really can make it fit the space rather than having to cut bits up and mess around with it in that way. So if you've got a bit overlapping, like, can you see there? It's going up the side there. You can just literally push on it, push it back down rather than cut it. if you can't be bothered to cut it. See? So, one of the reasons I love this product. If I was working in cotton, you couldn't do this. You'd have to measure everything. Right. If you've found that you've trapped any air bubbles, you're going to need to stab them with a pin and then smooth out anywhere that has left any marks. But we're going to need to smooth out a lot of these sort of cracky lines you get when you fold over, which is absolutely fine. It's really quick and easy to do. But I'm just going to finish off filling in the whole of this base before I smooth and beautify. Right, we've still got that bit of the underside to do, so let's match it in as best we can. I'm going to slightly overlap it like that, and then push it down to secure it. Sorry about banging around downstairs, I live with other people. There we go. And I'm going to push that up and fold it over like so. Now, once we've got clay allocated where we want it all, I think this can do with being chopped probably about there, really, and I can use that in the middle bit there. Smudge your clay around. You want to make sure that some of whatever you use on the bottom, so if you use a different colour, you want to bring it up and lip it over and then put whatever you want for your top surface on top of that, because it just holds everything in together. Now, I've got this covered on the base how I want. I'm just going to move that up the side a bit and get in my rolling pin. Make sure that you're not squashing your model, so I'm putting most of the weight across my thumb there in that gap, and I'm just going to start to make the clay level where I've overlapped it. Once it's kind of level, you can start to smooth it out with your thumb. There we go. It's just started to smooth in now. If you want to not distort patterning, you push down with your thumb rather than dragging. So lots of little pinches. You can do tiny drags to just smooth over the edge if you wish, but bear in mind that any dragging along will smear your design. So let's get that smoothed in how I want, and I will spend time probably off camera fiddling around with this and smoothing it all in properly like so, but all your join lines will vanish up pretty quickly. Now I want quite a flat edge to my sides, so I'll come across with a rolling pin and pinch along each of the edges just to make sure that they're squared, nice and squared up and looking uniform and even. So this stage can take a while of just literally going around and playing with it how you like. I'm just going to do the joining on the top surface because that is what makes a difference at the moment. I can always come back in later. So because I know I'm going to overlap the brown clay for the rocks, I'm not bothering trimming up that edge like I would normally, but I do want to fill in that little bit there with some sand like so. If you can find a glue that will go through an oven without discolouring, so some of the polymer clay varnishes and liquid polymer clay, you can use that and then put a coating of actual sand down if you have any. If it can go through an oven at the temperature that your clay says it needs to go hard, then you can include it in your work. If not, you're gluing it on after. Do not use super glue. It has a reaction with polymer clay. It can take months to do so, but eventually your join will fall apart and it leaves this really weird white mark as well. Right, that's all those sides secured in. I've just got to fill in this little back bit here and under the arch. So let's go for the back bit first. Come on, back up you. And you can do a patch job on this, so just tear a bit off, push it in, and you'll find that you can make it fit. Just rip off what you don't need. You can measure and draw and do all that sort of the professional stuff. But I find you get just as good a results by winging it. So there we go. And any little bits that are too big to push together, just put a little blob in, because I'm going to smooth it all out. So if you don't, you can leave it as join lines, and that can also be a look that actually can look quite good. I do know people who will colour their foil armatures, the masking tape that they covered in, they colour it a colour that they're not going to use anywhere on their piece, something like bright pink. Then if they accidentally miss a bit of armature and it's bare, it will show up far more than white, and that is a legitimate strategy. One I did very much when I first started working with armatures. So I can see I've got a tiny little channel there that I need to fill in, and again, instead of measuring it, I'm just squidging a bit of clay and shoving it in there, and it will fill, or I need a bit more, like I need a bit more. So yeah, there we go. That's basically the sand filled in. Make sure you've got it all pushed nicely against your board, that there aren't any air bubbles. You can feel when it's securely pushed down. If you bake it with an air bubble, nothing's going to shatter. This isn't ceramics. We are not working at temperatures high enough for that. What you will find is you can feel it moving between the wooden armature and the clay. It almost feels like you can wiggle it a bit. Feels kind of weird. So I put my scraps to one side, and I promise you there's a million uses for scraps. I do cover quite a lot of them in videos that have gone before. Now, texturing. You can come over with the various, where are they? Oops. Various texture sheets you can get from Fimo. I've got loads of them dotted around. Here we go, there's the rest of them. I'm thinking about first going over some of it with this dotty one, and then coming over. So what you do is you can burnish it in with a stone or the edge of your rolling pin, and you can see that it left a kind of texture mark to it, but it's hard to get in all the cracks and crevices. So unless it's a completely smooth thing, I use these very little. Or you can cut them in half and then cut the one half down into smaller pieces. What I tend to do, where are they? There. Ooh. Sorry, I'm just getting a tool. There we go. I've made some needle tools. I've threaded sewing needles onto a thread and then wind the thread together, encased the thread and the needles in a bit of polymer clay and baked it. I've done a smaller one and a larger one, and you can just go across and stipple it in with that, which is what I'm probably going to do as my main texture, like that. Just do a patch of it and then I'll show you what it looks like. And you can come in with so many different things just to cause a texture on it, but you want to convince people looking that this is sand. Here we go. Right, let's hold that up. Can you see along the back there?
Yeah, it looks good.
Yeah? It just stipples it all in.
You could do layers of one on top of the other.
You can do layers of the bigger bumps and the stippling. If you've not got these tools, you can use your ball tool and just keep dotting it over to make the bigger bumps, and then come in with a finer one just to make the small dots. But again, this is going to be a whole lot of work, which I'm totally going to do, but I'm probably going to do it off camera as to not bore you. But you can see how I'm coming in to do this. So once you've got that all stippled up how you like, we're going to come in and start to cover the brown of the rocks. So let's get my texture sheets out of the way. Tidiness is important. Do give them a wipe down when you've finished using them. It's so easy to cross-contaminate with things like texture sheets. And it's okay, you can clean off wrong colours from your clay with isopropyl alcohol, but it's easier just to give it a wipe before you put it away. Just saying. Right, I rolled out a load of sheets of brown. Now, it's really easy to want to just do the top side first, but we're not. We need to flip it over, and it's hard to see because it's got a base, but we've got to cover the underside of that gap there first. So let's take off a little bit, because it's going to be harder to do it last than it is to do it first. Any size bit that you can fit under that little ledge. See? Perfect. And you're going to smudge that into place around the rocks. Again, try not to trap air, and you may have to get one of your ball tools, something that can help you get into all the little nooks and crevices. And you can see, if I'd have done all this top side first, I'd be smushing that in too hard, really, just to try and get at the awkward bits. So I always do the awkward bits first. It makes the job more enjoyable because you're doing the trickier bits whilst you're more awake and more keen to be doing the project. Once you get a bit tired, you want all the simple bits to do. So now I've got that in place, like so, I can come in and do, whoops, the side bit down here. So again, a little bit torn off. You're going to tuck it in. Now, try not to drag it too much across your sand colour, because you're going to find that it will get stained with brown. That will do fine. Like that. Wrap this round, because I could just tear it off, but since it's there I might as well cover some rock with it. When you've got a bit sticking up, can you see? Let's hold this up. Can you see how where I come around that corner it's done a little bunch like that? Just pinch it together like so, and then lay that flat. Just make sure you're not trapping air, so you'll push from that bit there, because that's where the air bubble's liable to be, and you push it out towards the edge, and then that'll go on securely fine. Okay, and we keep going on the other side. Thin little bit torn off, and we're going in down, let's thinner side, down that gap like that. Now let's see where my clay is laying. You do find yourself flipping your model over a whole heap just to try and get it in all the gaps, but a bit of time and a bit of patience and you will get there. Let's tear this in half. I've not gone all the way to the bottom. If you've got a choice of covering the side that you joint on or covering the bottom bit, cover up towards the clay that you've already got, because it'll anchor the new bit. So then come in and do the next bit down there, which I am just gonna slot that in like that. Now, I wish I had fingers small enough to get into those sorts of gaps. That's when you've got to get your toolbox out. It's just not possible. So what I'm going to use is my little spatula and just move the clay onto the surface. Make sure it's fully attached. There's no white armature showing through. And come in there and just push it all on. I hold up once I've done with clay attaching, I promise. There we go. Right, so we got the gap done. Yeah, and around on the back like that. What I'm going to do is, I can already see I've got some dark brown on that yellow. Now that I've got it all covered, I'm just going to get my rubbing alcohol. Rubbing alcohol is isopropyl alcohol plus distilled water. The only reason they use distilled water is because it's used for medical things. If you're using it for craft purposes like we are, tap water's fine. I try to keep my isopropyl at 70%. I find when you go for 100, it's not that it evaporates. What it's doing is it's melting the top layer of clay. So at 70%, you get just enough melting to get rid of the colour that you didn't want. At 100%, I found that it really did end up with a big sticky mess. So you can see, look at the yellow and brown on there, how it just melted the top layer of that clay, and now that bit of sand in that archway looks nice and clean. Okay, it will get rid of your dust and bits of lint and all that sort of stuff that can get onto your clay. Right, we're going to now carry on covering the rest of it because we've done all the difficult bits. So I'm going to go outside first. Anywhere that there's some white, you want to fill that in like so. I will hold it up in a moment, don't worry. So what I've done is I've come around that bottom edge and made sure I got it sitting against the yellow clay. If I haven't, I'm going to just come in with a little bit of brown and fill up any white gaps that are showing, like so. Make sure it's all firmly stuck down, like that, and then that will anchor your clay so that you can start to sculpt it around the rest of the rock shape, like this. And I'm just pushing it over that bump. And the thing that I've found is, even though it should all be creased up there, the clay will move itself so it's almost straight. You'll have a little bit of a bump going on. Can you see? That's all that there was out of all that lot going on straight. So the flexibility of polymer clay is just a godsend. It really is. So I'm just going to patch in these last bits, and you end up on the last little bit with lots of little bits going in. You may end up overlapping some. That's fine. You can really go up to probably about 4 or 5 centimeters thick before you're really risking having too soft a center. If you've got something around the 4 or 5 centimeter thick, yeah, I would say you're looking at baking that for about an hour, maybe a bit longer. So I haven't worried about those join lines, and it's actually going to make it look good once we put the rock texture in. Okay, it can be so therapeutic covering an armature. Some armatures, an armature, by the way, is anything added to the inside of something to give it structural stability. So the human skeleton is an armature for our body. This foil is an armature for these rocks. Some armatures can be really complicated to make. So things like when you're making wire armatures for a human skeleton, that involves a whole lot of maths. But things like this, you can do it on a day where your mind is just derping out on everything, which today mine is, by the way, because there isn't a set shape, there isn't maths on how far away one bit is from another. It looks better when you overlap things and leave cracks and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, if you've got a bad day, make a coral reef. It's fun. Now, whilst I'm covering this in, I'll tell you about why I've had a crazy 2 weeks. I got my AstraZeneca, and I have something called fibromyalgia, which is like a body pain issues, and it set it off and everything was in agony. I mean, literally head to toe. Still worth it, still better than COVID by a long way. Once I got over that, I was just on the last few days of that being a problem, and one of my boy guinea pigs died. So guinea pigs, I've always been a guinea pig keeper, by the way, always, since I've been with my husband, so the last 10 years. They don't do well on their own. once in a while you'll get one that likes its own company, but generally they hate it. So if you've lost a guinea pig, you want to go get another, so long as you've got two. So what we do is we get a pair of males that are brothers of litter mates, because males can bond together quite well at a young age. They can bond still as adults, but it's a bit of a rougher going process. So we get two males, we neuter them both, and whoever goes second, whoever gets himself a couple of girlfriends, because our cage is big enough to fit 3. So Chip has found himself with a pair of baby girls, and he's gone from being the shy, submissive one. Oh, he's showing off. Oh, so much. He's trying to guard them. He's showing them everything. He's grooming them. It's serious love going on in my bedroom, because I keep my guinea pigs in a huge cage in there. It's really big. But where I spend a lot of time bedridden, they're far better than daytime TV. Really are. But we've got all the training to do that you need to do with some new babies, which is fun. It really is fun. It's hard work though, but it's worth it, because like any baby animal, you need to show it what you want it to do in its life. And we train ours to go up and down ramps, because it helps them gain more access on their cage, and it helps them come in and out for cleaning out. We do training on being handled, all sorts of things to get them ready for their lives as our pet guinea pigs. Almost got this covered. So yeah, that happened. It's now a joy to be in our bedroom, so you know, win some, lose some. I'm trying to make sure that the clay makes a few interesting shapes, as you can see. So some of the overlaps are a little more scruffy, and that's what you want for your rock. It'll make it easier for you to do the texturing in to convince people that it's rocks. Now, I would normally, once I've done all the texturing, I would come in and do a colour wash, which is where you mix a darker shade of acrylic paint than the clay you've got with water and drizzle it into any cracks, and it will make the cracks a darker colour and highlight them. But I'm really planning on coating this with a lot of different coral, so I'm not so bothered about spending a lot of time making sure the brown is really convincing of rock. Just having one last look around. Let's take it off its base, because you will always spot, can you see the problem there? Little gap, but where it was an overhang, I didn't spot that. So take it off your greaseproof paper when you think you've got it all covered, because you may find you haven't, and it's so much easier to fix it up at the early stages. Having said that, even if I bake that, you can come in and add raw clay to baked clay and then bake it again, and you can do that as many times as you want. Right, everything's on firmly. All the edges are covered, so let's give you a look at what I got. Whoop, like this. So I think that's a good starting point, but I want to put a little bit more texture on that because there's too much smoothness going on there. Now, the easiest thing you can do for rock texture. Get yourself some scraps of tin foil. Screw them up so that they're quite tight.
I think the easiest thing you can do is use rocks.
Yeah, you can use rocks. You can glue rocks to them. But
Or press rocks into them to get rock texture.
yeah, if you're pushing stuff into clay, you've got to give it a lip over the top, because clay, once it's baked, is quite smooth, and you'll find you'll be able to pop it off and you have to glue it on, which is what I do with a lot of my inclusions. Take it off and then 2-part epoxy. So right, tin foil scrunched up into a rough ball, and then you're going to go in and push it on the surfaces and get it right in there and dug in. And let's show you. Can you see the kind of speckled look? So that's the kind of shallow dents, but it will still leave you with quite a smooth rock. So what I would do first, get something that's got quite a wide how am I describing? Right, you want something that you can stab it with, but it's not a really, really thin blade, so that the cracks it leaves are slightly wider.
You need to be more central. Sorry, when you're showing it, because
you see how wide it is on its finished edge? That'll be how wide your cracks are. And you get to go in and make some score lines and dig at your piece to make it look more like rock. So there is no right and wrong way, but they tend to have quite zigzaggy, choppy lines of different depths. So I'm just going to put a few of these in, and then I'll go back over it with the foil. You can do this instead by adding extra clay rather than digging clay out. Make sure when you put in your dig marks though, that you're not going all the way through to the paper armature. So if you see white, you know you've gone too deep and you just got to add a bit more clay. Go at it from different angles and drag. It makes it look more realistic. So let's show you. Do you see what I mean? Dig at it, chop at it, put some lines on, and then you can come in with your foil and do the even finer textures over the top of that. But if you wanted subtle rocks, you'd just go in with the foil. So it's ones that are pretty smooth. But I'm not. I'm going for some real texture going on here. And you need to get it in all those gaps, because it looks a bit odd if you've done it everywhere except a patch. Here, that will do it for me. Let me show you. So, whoop. Is that any good? You see what I mean? How it does a very light texturing on it. And that can be quite a stress reliever, coming in and attacking your clay like that. But that's what we're going to do over the whole of the rocks and all of the sand. It's going to take me ages. Once I have done with it, I can then take little bits of brown, scrunch them into little pearls of, it looks like pebble pearls, so tiny little bits scrunched together like so, and add some of those around so that it doesn't look so flush. You've got, as well as some bits that are dug in, some bits that are sticking out as well. And all these things, so again, a bit of flat, and you're just going to scrunch it up and twist it on itself until you end up with what looks like a little pile of pebbles. Yeah, then just add that on somewhere random. The other thing you can do, get some nice little bits of slate and wedge those in as levels, like little flat planes. But you're going to need to make sure, if you're doing that, that you definitely have enough clay on the underside to support that once it's baked. So you can add in other stones, and that's one of the good things about the foil, is it really does give you a secure base. But what I'm going to do is build up some of the underside so it's more of a slab and more structurally supported. So again, let's make a big pile of rocks, twist in, scrunch in like that, and then I pick this up, put it upside down and add that in there so that this little lip firstly looks more natural, and secondly it will support some weight on it. You can also make a few little rocks to put on the sand, which are useful because we can again put other things on them. So little pile of rocks, let's put it down there like that. Do a couple of them sprinkled around. Now I'm going to call it here. Over the week I'm going to finish off doing this texturing. For once I'm not going to bake in between. Normally when I finish the week, before I start the next week, I'll bake what I've done so far. I want to use the stickiness of the raw clay to help me secure all my coral and other bits. So this one I'm going to leave raw. Okay? And next week we're going to get started on some of that coral. Then hopefully the week after that we are going to be doing some of the things like crabs and starfish and actual fish. Yeah, all the sea life to go with it. So I hope you all have a good week, and I'm sure I'll have a good week because I'll have fun going at this. It's probably going to take me a few hours, but it's literally just the same steps repeated over and over. And I'll see you next week, okay? Do like, follow, share. It really helps build up my channel. And yeah, have a good week, and I will see you next week. Bye everyone.